want to talk about combat sports and competitions in general, the competition for resources. So, combat sports is basically the extreme of the competition for resources as far as society allows as legal. So, with the competition for resources, it's either, you care about the other people involved, your competition, and it's just like that's just how life is the best person gets the resources, and you're trying to be the best because that's your responsibility. Or you're a savage and you don't care about the other person at all. Now, with the combat sports, they're usually savages. Okay, that's why you see the kinds of personalities that you see in these people. Sports in general, especially aggressive sports in general. You see horrible kinds of people, terrible backgrounds, coming from horrible communities, just really criminal people that make all this money being savage and violent and, entertaining all the other savage people in society that watch it and fund it and all this stupidity. So it's either they're a savage or they're just a really confused, irresponsible individual, thinking that this is just life, you compete for resources, this is some kind of consensual thing. You don't hate people, you're not a savage, you care about well-being, but, this is just life and you have to go, beat somebody to death possibly to make some money, and you just agree to put each other in this position. It's absolute irresponsibility, stupidity. Okay, it's horrible. So when you see this boxing, UFC, these combat sports, wrestling, you got football, basketball, they're running each other over, and baseball is just unnecessarily dangerous. Soccer, you're kicking people in the face with a ball and running people over and stuff, and okay, it's just irresponsible. Most of the time, the individuals are savages. They come from criminal backgrounds and stuff. Okay, that's why you see the demographic that you see in these sports. Other times, they're just, confused and making irresponsible decisions, thinking it's some kind of, consensual, reasonable competition for resources, and there's some kind of productivity involved in displaying this athleticism and to people for some kind of educational purpose or something. So I'll give examples of reasonable competitions for resources. So, sports and entertainment, I don't believe in entertainment. I don't like the word entertainment. Something needs to be educational. So, sports for some kind of educational purpose, I find it pretty stupid most of the time. Unless it's some sports might be beneficial, like racing, on your feet, weightlifting competitions, just displays of strength that aren't direct contact. Stuff sometimes I see the benefit, you see how people train, how strength is improved, how health is improved. But a lot of the time these sports are irresponsible or just, it's not educational. But let's say an educational competition for resources, you go to college, you get a degree, you're in this competition for a job, you're doing your best against somebody else, you care about that person, but you still do your best. Okay, you get the job, that person didn't, you get the resources, they didn't. Okay, you're not harming that person, that's just life. You're actually taking care of them by doing your best. Everybody's supposed to do their part in that way. That's a reasonable competition for resources. Okay, you work in a trade, you do your best at the trade, somebody else isn't as talented, you know, that's reasonable competition. Now when you put yourself and another person in danger, like in harm's way of, risking time off of your life and your health, like risking your health, it's just horrible. It's it's barbaric. So yeah, these people aren't being gentle when they engage in these sports. Okay, these violent competitions. It's not like they're trying to preserve the other person anyway. Just they're throwing careless punches. Okay, they know that they could be inflicting brain damage and causing serious harm and death and stuff. Like, it's not like they're trying to be gentle when they're throwing punches at each other, trying to protect the other person's brain. Okay, like, or when they're tackling somebody, trying to protect their spine or something, like, you know, making sure they don't break limbs and stuff when they're slamming each other on the wrestling mat. Like, this stuff is horrible. All right, and they act like they're like gladiator slaves or something sometimes. They're like, oh, I'm just so oppressed, I have no other financial opportunities. Like, you're just being greedy, okay? Go work construction or something if you want to have a physical job. Like, join the military, okay? But, this stuff's horrible. Sometimes they act like it's just this sad state of affairs. They're just like, society just, puts them in this position where they have to fight another person, for resources, and it's just like they try to play some kind of victim or something. Like, no, you're greedy. Like, these competitions, these combat sports and stuff, they're not training exercises. Like, these people are being harmed. Okay, I understand that it's wise to train in your combat, to have these, like, jujitsu courses and, like, stuff like that. But you don't actually engage in a competition to where you're not respecting the well-being of the other person. Like, in the military, you train to fight, but it's not right to just all out start fighting some innocent person. Like, training as opposed to competition is different. So if these people want to engage in combat for money, they should work security. They should join the military, join law enforcement. All right, they should not fight other people consensually. All right, they need to be fighting criminals. And then the other sports, like football and stuff, like, if you want to work a physical job, okay, don't do something that's going to put somebody in such danger. But that's why these things are so lucrative. It's because society is just mostly just absolutely savage and moronic, just disgusting and violent. They try to manipulate. Okay, all these evil people are so manipulative, but they let it come to light sometimes, and then they just deny it later. All right, these people are wicked, violent. They need to be apprehended. They need to be exposed. Okay, all in the media. All right, all in the politicians and high in business, and it's all everywhere. In the poverty, in the upper class. All right, these people are just savage manipulators. Okay, really vicious people. All right, I'm talking about criminals. All right, they make threats. They don't respect your rights. So you need to expose these people, have them prosecuted for the incitement of violence and making threats, the incitement to commit crimes and drugs or whatever they're promoting. Just promiscuity for money.